Hello and welcome to Dublin City University and the National Anti-Bullying Research and Resource Centre. Thank you for joining us for this online launch of the school resources that have been produced as part of the Gender Equality Matters project. We're delighted that you've joined us here at ABC for this launch. The centre is a university designated research centre located in DCU Institute of Education. Researchers at the centre were the first in Ireland to undertake studies on school bullying, workplace bullying, homophobic bullying and cyberbullying. And today they continue their work in this area as well as in other related issues. In fact, scholars at our centre are recognised globally as leaders in their field. So it's no surprise that our centre is now involved in this project with partners in Italy, Spain and Greece, and that we are producing resources that are being used in primary schools to address the issue of gender equality. It's my pleasure now to introduce to you the leader of the project, Dr Seline Keating, who will tell us a bit more about those resources.
The GEM project aims to raise awareness and to enhance the confidence and capacity levels among children, adolescents, parents, teachers and educators to empower whole school and wider communities to challenge attitudes and behaviours that undermine gender equality. Over the past 2 years, the GEM team has designed and delivered training modules to whole school staff, teachers, parents and educators. These have been carried out face-to-face but also online through various online platforms. We have also developed a school self-evaluation tool. This tool enables schools to reflect on and assess their current practice in relation to gender stereotyping, gender-based bullying and gender-based violence. It highlights to schools areas in which they are succeeding, but it also points to areas that may need improvement and are in need of review. Today's event focuses on the GEM classroom materials. These classroom materials were designed for 5th and 6th class primary school pupils. They are embedded in the SPHE curriculum and grounded within existing school policy, such as the anti-bullying policy, the wellbeing policy statement, and school child protection procedures. Each of the 5 lessons is presented in a step format. This step format allows teachers the opportunity to choose where they begin teaching these lessons, based on the pupil's prior knowledge. Each lesson also includes a list of new vocabulary, resources, suggestions for extension activities post-lesson delivery, and also home school links. This actively involves the parents and guardians of the pupils, which is really important and integral to the success of the GEM programme. Every activity that the pupils engage in the GEM classroom materials are active, inclusive, experiential and transformative in nature. They allow the pupils opportunities to have a rich discussion with their peers on topics like gender stereotyping, gender-based bullying and gender-based violence. To support schools further in their delivery of these classroom materials, we have also designed a massive open online course. This MOOC contains 4 different modules to enhance the school community's knowledge of topics like gender stereotyping, gender-based bullying and gender-based violence. All of the classroom materials and the MOOC, along with the self-evaluation tool, are available to download from the GEM website.
Thank you, Seline, for sharing those resources with us. It's a very exciting project and we're looking forward to learning more about it later on in this launch. I'm delighted now to introduce to you the President of Dublin City University, Professor Darragh Keogh.
Thank you very much, James, and thank you for that welcome. And thank you, Seline. As we say in our native language, Tá fáilte roimh go léir. You are all very welcome to this launch this afternoon. This is important. The resource is called Gender Equality Matters. And yes, gender equality matters. It's of extreme importance to us and to the education system. And for that reason, Dublin City University is proud to be hosting this launch this afternoon. I'd like especially on behalf of the university, to express our warm welcome to the former President of Ireland, Dr Mary McAleese. Dr McAleese was first citizen of Ireland, but from her inauguration, she put equality and equity at the heart of all of her activities. We're delighted to have her along here as a champion for the cause. I'm equally pleased to welcome Dr Maureen McAleese, who's Chancellor of Dublin City University. And I'd also like to welcome Maureen King, who's the Chair of the DCU Anti-Bullying Centre Advisory Board. Today, we're launching an exciting and innovative set of classroom materials, which have been developed as part of the Gender Equality, the GEM project. So I'm delighted that we're joined by so many people who collaborated in creating these resources. These include primary principals, teachers and parents from Ireland and our partners in Spain, Greece and Italy. Thank you for your contribution and welcome this afternoon. DCU's leadership in the GEM project is founded in the commitment of our Institute of Education at the university to academic excellence and innovation. In particular, the project comes from the DCU Anti-Bullying Centre, directed by my colleague James O'Higgins Norman. The centre is globally recognised as a centre of excellence. The centre indeed hosts the world's unique UNESCO chair dedicated to anti-bullying research, and the anti-bullying initiatives from the centre and advice policy are used in schools across Ireland. The Anti-Bullying Centre reflects the People First agenda of Dublin City University. We put people at the heart of our mission. We are for people and a publicly funded institution dedicated to the public good. And the Anti-Bullying Centre reflects our values of equality, educational opportunity and social justice. And the GEM project indeed reflects these values. And the project too is aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly Goal 4, which advocates quality education, and Goal 5, which is gender equality. The project is funded by the EU's Human Rights, Equality and Citizenship Programme. And post-Brexit, these kind of European collaborations are more important than ever. DCU is very fortunate, of course, to have such excellent partners as KMOP in Greece, the Fondazione Mondo Digitale in Italy, and the University of Murcia, and the European School Heads Association from the Netherlands. I commend our 4 European partners for their work on this project and for their dedication, insight and devotion to the task of equality. Thanks again to the participating school principals, to teachers, pupils and parents. Your active participation has ensured the excellent outcomes we will discuss today. But of course, all great projects depend on great leadership. And I'm very proud today to thank the principal investigator, my colleague, Dr. Seline Keating, whose work has resulted in this impressive array of outputs and resources from the project. And these resources include whole school teacher parent training modules, classroom materials, an ambitious MOOC, a school self-evaluation tool, a project website, and a conference planned for February 2021. Again, the classroom materials will be hugely beneficial to teachers, parents, and children, and they will make a difference, putting gender equality and the children's welfare at the heart of all that we do. These resources will provide schools with new tools, new resources to teach important but challenging subjects in schools in an active, inclusive and meaningful way. I'd like again to congratulate all of those involved. You should be very proud and confident that your work will make a difference to thousands and hundreds of thousands of children across our continent. And now I'm proud to hand over to our chair, Maureen King, who will lead us in the next part of our event. Maureen, as James said at the outset, is chair of the DCU Anti-Bullying Centre's Advisory Board. She's also CEO of iTrust Ethics Limited and has 20 years experience in risk and compliance roles. She's had very senior roles in the telecommunications sector, and she's an active member too in the online safety advisory group for the Irish Society for the Protection of Cruelty to Children. So without any more ado, I'd hand you over to Maureen for this next section. Maureen.
Thank you, Dara. Thank you for that very warm welcome and introduction, and for your continued support of the Anti-Bullying Centre, particularly when you became president of DCU. Mary and Martin, it is my great privilege and pleasure to welcome you both to our virtual event and the launch of the GEM classroom materials. I suppose first things first, how are you both? How are you keeping? You might just need to... Yeah.
Neither of us speaking, we're good.
Isn't it wonderful to actually have an occasion to dress up for, so that we can put on I suppose a shirt and a jacket and a bit of a guna. So look, it's wonderful to see you both.
Anyway, I admit that I am sitting in my comfortable slippers at the same time.
I'm in the flat shoes as well, Mary, so we're both in good company. So look, it's wonderful to see you both in such good health and good spirits. And I suppose, Mary, I might just ask you, we heard earlier from Dr. Seline Keating about one of the aims of the GEM programme is to challenge attitudes and behaviours that undermine gender equality. Why do you think a programme like the GEM programme is important?
It's essential for our children that they get the best education and the best formation growing up, and for that they need the best information. And unfortunately, attitudes that carry things like gender inequality and prejudice, these things go back generations. They're carried in the ether. My grandmother, who had 11 children and 60 grandchildren, used to say, what's learnt in childhood is engraved on stone. And many years later, when my grandfather's, when his headstone was raised, in the granite there was a mistake. And I asked the people who put it up if they could just, chisel that out and get the right date in. And they said, no, you can't do that. It's too deeply embedded in the stone. We need to take that stone down and put up a new one. Well, you can do that with a headstone. You can't do that with a child. With a child, we get one go around. And so to see this wonderful project aimed at opening our children up to the world, and so that they, without knowing it, our children are being educated every day. They're absorbing attitudes, perceptions, information, some of which is healthy and a lot of which is unhealthy. And this project ensures that the healthiest gets to them, that they get the healthiest information, so that we don't discover as adults how skewed, how twisted, how wasteful our childhood formation was, because in it we became engraved with things that we could not escape from, things that told us that women could only do this and men could only do that, instead of opening us up to a world where if we work together with all the talents released and all the talents encouraged, we would really, really see a world that is capable of soaring to different heights.
Yes, could I come in there, Maureen? I think that what I like really about this particular program is the fact that the prevention is right at the heart of it. I mean, we can look at gender inequality and stereotypes in one of two ways. We can dismantle what is there, and that can be quite a difficult task, because generally it involves changing and shifting attitudes and assumptions and views that have been so deeply embedded. That is difficult, but we have to keep doing that. But this particular program comes out from the other end, trying to prevent these stereotypes and gender inequalities from building, and then perhaps to trying to dismantle the bits that have already been ingrained from a very young age. And so for me, that's an important aspect of it. I also think that, we should always keep our mind on the ultimate prize of full gender equality, because what it really means is that it releases individuals from the straitjacket of their stereotypes, and boys will gain as much from that as girls, and that old adage really applies here, where where it says none of us are free until all of us are free. So I think the prevention aspect to this, I think, is very commendable.
It is, and I suppose we're talking about a child's development and coming in at that very earliest possible stage, as you say, Martin, around the preventative stage. And I suppose a core skill of this whole programme is to promote empathy. And that's really important in a child's development. And one of the activities that I found absolutely fantastic was where our children are getting to explore their feelings by walking in the shoes of another child that may have been bullied. And to be able to talk about that and to actually experience that at such a young age is really important in developing that empathy. So do you think that empathy is essential in a young child's development?
Oh,
Mary?
my Lord, so utterly, absolutely essential. A life without, we've all seen the lives that evolved without it, and how much time was wasted and how much life was wasted in not helping a child to be introduced to the other and the otherness of the other, and how to be unafraid of it. I mean, we grew up in a community in Northern Ireland, Martin and I, where the otherness of the other was, you were afraid of it, you were terrified of it, you hated it, you were contemptuous of it. Such an unhealthy upbringing. I think of Brian Keating, who was held hostage and in the Middle East, if you remember, and in Lebanon. And he wrote a book afterwards called An Evil Cradling. And he was describing the process of raising children to hate the other, to be contemptuous of the other, to never stand in the shoes of the other, to never look at the world from the other's perspective, and to realize there's more than one perspective in this world, and your perspective needs to be known, but also not to be rammed down people's throats, but rather to be gentle, to be generous, to be understanding, and to have empathy for the other. That seems to me to be crucial to a world that we aspire to, a world that is not wasteful of talent, that does not allow children to become hostages to a sense of fear at best of the other and hatred at worst of the other. Also to take responsibility at an early age for the other, for befriending, for understanding. I think this is just the best thing I've heard about for a very long time in children's education. Just the best.
Yeah, I think, just to add to that, I think that empathy is a very important attribute or quality that you take with you through life. And I suppose this very basic meaning, it is being able to feel the feelings of others. You know, it says in the program, to walk in the shoes of the other, to live in the skin of the other. I think that if you can do that, that will dictate your response to the other in so many, many ways, because understanding the emotions and the feelings, what's going through the other's head, you know, will temper your response in so many, many ways. You won't want to demean or diminish or make someone feel small or hurt. So, I mean, that really is, I think, a tremendous gift or quality to take with you. And I think also, and it's worth remembering this, that empathy is something that just doesn't come with us, you know, as a finite quantum when we come into the world. It's something that we can grow and develop, just like personality, just like confidence. And I would urge, you know, all the young ones in the veil of the program to focus on the development of their own empathy. It will stand them really well in their lives ahead.
Absolutely, Martin. And I suppose it helps our children to build a sense of security and to help them to have stronger relationships with people if they can actually see through the eyes of another, as you say, Mary. And maybe we might just talk about the whole area of gender stereotyping. Martin, I suppose my question to you would be that we know from our research that this is still very, very prevalent. And we know how powerful it can be in shaping young children's attitudes around various different roles and careers of choice that they might aspire to. So I suppose how do you think we could help young people to think differently about gender roles?
Well, I think the first thing I'd say about that, Maureen, is that children don't come into the world wrapped up in a stereotype. And yet research tells us that by the age of 2, which is very early, maybe earlier, they have a very definite understanding of female and male roles in society. And I think we've just got to ask ourselves, why is that? And to address that. And I suppose it goes back really to the home, to parental engagement and to the environment in the home. I think that's where it all starts. And if it starts wrongly there, it can be reinforced through same-sex schools, right the whole way up, where girls and boys don't actually get a chance to converge and overlap. I mean, parents, I think, really need to become more and more aware of the consequences of their engagements. In other words, if they steer a child towards, a more general neutral direction, which is good, but the converse is that could go the other way. How they engage with their children, and particularly with regard how they engage with each other, mother and father, because my most vivid image of growing up was just observing what my father did and what my mother did. My father was the breadwinner, she was a homemaker, and that was it. All he did was hand over the wage packet on Friday night. She did the rest. So that was my starting point, and that was reinforced in school. There were things that boys did, that girls did, and I said we didn't overlap through games. I mean, in primary school, secondary school, and right through college, 18 years, I only witnessed or came across one female teacher. So I think all of that has to change. And in the home, parents really have to be very careful when they see their kids watching cartoons on television, reading the storybooks, the games that they play on their devices, the toys they play with. Many of these things have gender-specific characters and gender-specific activities. So they really need to know how to intervene and the language that they need to intervene with to steer what could be a developing inequality or stereotyping situation into a more general neutral direction. So I think that this particular program, it begins with 10-year-olds in primary school. And I expect the next iteration will be to go back further, right, the whole way back to earlier primary school years, and maybe eventually into the home.
Absolutely. And one important aspect of the program, sorry Mary, go ahead. Yeah.
The home are parents' crucial partners in all this, along with teachers and books and kids. We don't just take our education from books, from schools. We're absorbing it, as Martin said, you're absorbing it from the cradle. You're absorbing it from the cradle. And we don't have, as babies and as little toddlers and as children of 4, 5 and 6, we don't have the interrogative skills to know the quality of the information we're being fed. We don't know how good or bad it is. Very often we don't find out until it's too late. That's why it's so important that there is this dialogue, this trialogue between parent, child and school, so that you're getting the best information to children and you're equipping them with tools that are able to penetrate information systems that are ages old. I remember years ago when I was in Queen's and working in Queen's Belfast, we were told by the Fair Employment Agency and the Equal Opportunities Agency, more or less around the same time, that we didn't employ enough Catholics and we didn't employ women. And so we set about changing the culture. And changing the culture from, employing more Catholics, that happened rather quickly. But in changing the culture to employing more women was much, much, much more difficult. And we wondered why, and the reasons are kind of obvious. It was much more deeply embedded. The attitudes, for example, that give us gender inequality, and in particular that favour the male over the female and tend to suppress the talents of women or corral them, chain them up in one area, they go back not just decades, not just centuries, but millennia. And here we are, we're born into the world, we're not aware that, that these things they're hard granite by the time we're born. And we have to keep chipping away at that hard granite. And that's what this GEM project does. It actually takes a bit of a sledgehammer to that, because in the past, we were inclined to, when I was at school, we didn't have any male teachers in my school until my latter years. the last, we had one male teacher, God help him, and I was in an all girls, convent school all the way through, and then not only that, but we never had this kind of conversation. We never sat and had a conversation about gender. Everything was already given. It was already written on stone. And who were we to chat, to try and change the narrative? It was as if we didn't have the authority to change the narrative. It had been handed to us. It had been, it had been carved on granite. Well, we now know different, because we have got to change that narrative. Our world has suffered. Our families, communities, our country, our world has suffered because we have not changed that narrative. We've kept people down. We've kept people out. We've created really skewed relationships. And that's not healthy. Now we want healthy.
Yes, I think
We
that
do.
when you,
Sorry, Martin, go ahead.
again, as Mary was speaking there, when we combine gender stereotypes with other stereotypes, the so-called intersection of stereotypes, others based on sexual orientation or age or disability or race or religion, we really reinforce very negative impacts. And we've got to be very conscious of that, because what that actually does is it closes down the potential and opportunity, stops those things in their track as far as some individuals are concerned. So we need to be really, really careful of that. And I think too, just another point that strikes me, young girls, traditionally and to an extent today, still steer away from the so-called STEM subjects and the jobs that will flow from that. And I think that teachers and guidance counsellors in particular have a huge role to play here in terms of what I would call multi-interventions at the different times when a child is excluding subjects. And those subjects are excluded, I think, on the basis that they're not for girls, they're more for boys. And what is lost there is the opportunities down the line in the workplace that would flow from having taken on and been successful in those subjects. So there's a role here, and maybe a greater role, for teachers in their ordinary, everyday interactions with their pupils, and then more specifically for guidance counsellors to have more sort of multi-interventions at different times when those choices are being made in regard to these subjects.
There is, Martin, and I suppose that goes to the heart of the GEM programme for the whole society approach and the whole community approach to this. And we, that's more or less what we are promoting, that it isn't just one single thing, it is a combination of a number of things, and the critical role that the parent plays, and the importance of the positive role models that are in young children's lives and the influence that they can have. I think one challenge that we know as well from our research is that sometimes parents, Mary, you spoke about having the conversation, young children talking about these things, challenging them in a safe way. And the home skills or the home school link within the GEM programme includes various different lessons and worksheets that encourage children to continue those conversations at home with parents and guardians, which is really a positive aspect of this, because I think sometimes parents are not really sure how to have those conversations or what those conversations even look like. Mary, yeah, I think you had your own experience maybe when you were choosing your own career of choice in law. I mean, where was the influence in your life when you were choosing a career in law that was predominantly a male career path?
Well, funnily enough, it's very strange, because the first time I mentioned wanting to become a lawyer, I was 14 or 15, 14, I think. It was quite normative for people to leave school at 15 then, and our parish priest asked me what I wanted to do. Presumably, I think I was good. And I think his presumption was I should be leaving school at 15, like everybody else around here, 70% unemployment in my parish. And I said, well, that I wanted to stay on at school and become a lawyer. And he immediately, without even thinking or stopping for breath, he said, oh, you can't. 2 reasons. He said, 1, you're a woman, and 2, you've nobody belonging to you in the law. Now, my mother threw him out. My mother, who was so deferential to priests and would be, said she whipped the chair out from under him. She wasn't having it. And she literally asked him to leave. Well, she didn't actually ask him to leave. She propelled him to the door, and she told me to ignore him. That was the only career advice my mother ever gave me. My parents never stopped gone and had this kind of conversation with us. Why? My mum left school at 15, became a hairdresser, dad left school at 14, became a barman. They were that generation that felt excluded from these kind of conversations because they thought they only belonged to people who had degrees. They felt they didn't have that confidence. I think they have it now in a different way, but it's a wonderful thing to be able to have this kind of communication with parents, to say to parents, you're partners in this, you're part of this, you're an essential part of this. Here's the dialogue we want to have with you, and here's the conversation we want you to have with your children. And we don't want you to have it once, we want you to have it on an ongoing basis so that your children grow up with these questions. If ever anything proved the value of conversation in our country, it was the huge debate around family tables around the same-sex marriage referendum. What changed people's minds was the intergenerational debate, grannies, grandas, mummies, daddies, kids, particularly adolescents, talking with a newfound confidence that they had from their education to parents and to grandparents. And that was the outcome of that was a fabulous transformation of our society. Can you imagine the transformation now by engaging in this kind of conversation this early on in our children's lives? I think it's a wonderful program. And the key to it is the circle of conversation, the circle of conversation.
Yeah, I think one of the attractive features of the program is that there is a facility for training parents, which is absolutely crucial, because what you don't want to happen is for the kids to come home from school with what they've just learned and full of enthusiasm and putting it up to the parents, and the parents, no, don't agree with that. And you get these mixed messages with the program. But just in talking about career guidance, I never had a career guidance conversation ever. I mean, I went off and did subjects because I kind of liked them, and ended up not really liking them all that well, and changed them 2 or 3 times in my working life and career. So these are, I mean, it's phenomenal. And look, I just think going through the program, the GEM program, my God, would have been great for so many reasons if I had been the beneficiary or a participant in something similar when I probably needed it the most.
Yeah, I could have cried. I could have cried for the childhood I didn't have. I had a good childhood and educated, well educated for the times. But looking at this material, I literally could cry with joy at what these children are going to experience by comparison with not the waste, I've used that word before, but just the lack of imagination that was available to us in our day, that we had to come the long way around to get to, you know. It's a great shortcut for the children who will engage in GEM. They'll be there way ahead, long time ahead of us.
I mean, I maybe correct myself. The only career advice I thought I got was the fact that my mother would have loved me to become a priest, which was the ambition of every mother. Maybe to donate 2 sons to the priesthood. I remember going off to an order for a weekend just to check it out. I was about 14 years and couldn't wait to get home on the Sunday night. Otherwise, Mary would have been very disappointed in her life. Say that for something. So anyway, that's for what it's worth. But anyway, I wanted that particular occupation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose the final GEM lesson is titled "Making a Difference."
Yes.
And at that lesson, children learn about inspiring role models of social change, of which you both clearly are and have been for a significant amount of time. Like the late John Hume, who spoke about the answer to difference is to respect it. And he spoke about therein lies the most fundamental principles of peace, which is respect for diversity. So we're back to values now around respect and that. They also learn about Malala Yousafzai, who talks about one child, one teacher, one book, one pen can change the world. Really, really powerful, very inspirational young lady. And I suppose the simple message really is that every small action makes a difference. And where we've seen both of them as very prevalent activists in social change, every one of us can make a difference with a small action that we take. So I suppose to both of you, my question would be, what words of wisdom would you give to encourage all of us to be positive role models in challenging behaviour that undermines gender equality? And importantly, I suppose, to be defenders or bystanders of human rights.
I suppose, Maureen, when I think of role models, I think of two broad groups. I think of those that are high profile, well known, lots of followers, you know, people
Yes.
up them and to emulate them and to, you know, respect and trust them. And I think that comes with a price, because you have to be very vigilant in that role in terms of what you do. And if nobody's perfect, so if you do something that's not good, you immediately apologize and say the sorry word. And in relation to, you mentioned Malala there and John and others, and I think of Kamala Harris, you know, who, when she was got through at the night of the election, or the night afterwards, in her speech, when she was speaking, I was just thinking, you know, just looking at her, that was a powerful image. Getting to where she got to was in itself a phenomenal thing. But then she reinforced it with a message when she said, you know, I may be the first woman in this office. I will not be the last, because every little girl watching tonight will say this is a country of possibilities. So you can imagine just how energized and how those young women will be prompted to, like, just sail for it. Realize their ambitions and not be distracted or derailed by stereotyping. That's one group. The other group, I think, is that we should remember this, and in some ways the more important group, and that is ourselves. Every single one of us is called to be a role model, and we do that by the values that we live by, particularly care, how we care for the elderly, the immigrants, the disabled, the example that we show, how we empower, affirm and encourage all of those. And you know, all of those little gestures that we make to empower and help and support as individuals really accumulate to a phenomenal force. You know, I think that when we're doing those small things, don't be put off. Just realize that every single little bit contributes to a whole sort of cohort of things that other people are doing, and they all make a difference.
And the other important element there, Maureen, is the challenging of views that are stated in our company, in our presence, around us, which have to be challenged because they're not healthy, because they're unhealthy, because they're mean, they're nasty, and they're going to make life miserable. And in the past, when they went unchallenged through silence, that was when they gathered momentum. That's how they gather their heft. And the only way of stopping that is to gather momentum the other way. And that means standing up, being courageous, speaking out. That means in the home too, you know, saying when you hear the sexist comment or the homophobic comment, just saying, excuse me, I'd like to stop that right here, because if I don't stop it, it moves. The person saying it thinks they've got away with it now. They may very well think that the silent person is another recruit to their worldview. And the only way we're going to stop that is to actually say, no, I'm sorry, you're going to have to put that a different way. You're going to have to think again. That's not acceptable. That's rude. That's offensive. It's hurtful. It's bullying. That's how we stop it. And we stand together. I mean, how many people in workplaces in the past felt they couldn't speak up? Because if they did, they would maybe lose a job, or they'd lose a position, or they would be bullied, they would be harangued, because nobody would stand with them. Now we have to stand with the individual, stand together, be courageous. And I think, again, the GEM project is going to give children that courage, because they have the conviction. They know what they're talking about. That's the important thing. They know what they're talking about. And to be able to say to those children, this is on you. The kind of world you want, to be accepted for who you are, completely, absolutely, utterly, to be free to become the person you want to be anything you want to be. If you want that world, you don't have to fight for it. It's not come easy to you. But one of the ways you can make it happen is to make it happen for everybody else around you, to show them the respect. And if you're respectful for others, if you are a person who shows respect for the diversity of others, who understands the world cannot operate with just one talent. If we all have the one talent, we're marooned. You know, we never get momentum. We need the diversity, we need the creativity. So we need to be supportive of it, encouraging of it. And for that one child who has the confidence to say to the person who uses the bullying language or the sexist language or the homophobic language, actually, you know, that is so stupid. That is so unacceptable. That's the world we want. The child who is completely passionate about the benefit of diversity, the benefits of equality, and who, when challenged by the, you know, challenged back, has the language, is able to say, well, here's my experience, here's what I learned. How wonderful would that be?
It would be absolutely amazing, Mary. I think one of the key aspects of the GEM program is giving them the language and giving them the tools, but it's empowering children to have those conversations and to be able to challenge in a really safe way, which I think is equally important, because there's a healthy way in which to have those conversations. There's a respectful way in which to have them, where we are respecting each other's views and opinions. And I suppose fundamentally then what we're doing is we're leaving, I suppose, our own legacies behind us in terms of the future, because the children are creating that future for us. So maybe you might just give us, Martin, maybe first just a final few words on your encouragement of, I suppose, the participation and the engagement in the GEM program.
Well, first of all, I'd just like to thank Seline, Keating and the team at ECU and the 4 universities in the European Union that collaborated with it to produce this fantastic program. I mean, just when you were speaking there, you were speaking about the language and believing the kids when they say, just, it brings me back to a dark time in our past when with child sexual abuse and so forth, and the children didn't have the language. We didn't believe them anyway, you know, we just didn't believe them. And like that, those were terrible times. And I think that what this is really doing is a big shift in creating a far, far healthier environment for our children. And hopefully that they too will build on this so that the next generation after that are moving into an entirely different environment where we've managed to harness the full potential, affording opportunity to everyone, irrespective of gender, opportunity everyone to express their potential and their abilities, and put that simply as a gift at the service of our communities, our economy and our country. I think we'll probably never really know ourselves and what we're capable of until we see the full application of full gender equality in all its diversity.
But the important part of this book, this program opens with the word rights. And I think that's the major culture change, the culture shift we are now witnessing. As parents begin to realize, as teachers begin to realize, children have rights, autonomous rights themselves. They are, and those rights have to be respected: right to education, to freedom of information, freedom of conscience, freedom of opinion, freedom of belief. We as parents, we as teachers, our job is to facilitate them in using their rights and living with their rights unfolding to the best possible way, in the best possible way, not by closing them down, but by opening them up. And so I think it's a wonderful thing. We're living through these days now. We've had the Convention on the Rights of the Child for just over a little over 30 years now. One of the things that bothers me greatly is the extent to which it is not known. It is not known by children. It is not known by parents. We've just had a very big report which shows that it's not known by religious leaders. Across the 7 major religions in the world, there is huge ignorance of the rights of children. And so we need to have this debate about and to understand that the GEM project comes out of an understanding of children as rights bearers. They have this is not a gift to children. This is not some kind of act of charity to children. This is responding to children's rights, their right to the best information, best education, so that they can become the best young citizens good people, great people, magnificent people who build up the human community, who do not close down the opportunity of others because they're different, but who see in them brothers and sisters who, if we help them to grow, if we respect them and they respect us in turn, there's a good chance that this world will be an awful lot better than it has been in the past.
Certainly would, Mary. Well, I think for me anyway, this is probably one of the best conversations I've ever had in my life. So thank you both. And it's just the simplicity of the way that you speak, but yet it's so profound. And your words of wisdom, I think, will have resonated with everybody on this webinar this evening, but also anybody who listens to it. And we would encourage people to share our conversation today. So I suppose just to thank you both, Dr. Martin McAleese and Dr. Mary McAleese, for your lifelong purposeful activism in many, many areas, and particularly in the area of human rights, and for your valuable contribution today in helping us to promote a rights and equality-based approach and to tackling gender-based bullying, gender stereotyping, and gender-based violence. We know that you are a huge supporter of academia and research, and that you're a great friend of DCU as well. So thank you both sincerely for giving us your time today. We're very, very grateful. Now I would like to thank you, Martin.
Okay.
Now I'd like to welcome back Dr. Seline Keating, who is ABC's inspiring leader and empathetic scholar who led the GEM programme, just to wrap up our conversation today. Hi, Seline.
Hi, thank you very much, Maureen. Accordia, I would like to express my gratitude to both Mary and Martin McAleese for being part of today's launch and for their engagement in such a thought-provoking and inspiring fireside chat. Your presence here today is very much appreciated and valued. Thank you to Professor Dara Keogh for his welcoming address, and to Maureen King for moderating today's discussion. I would also like to express my gratitude to Claire, Teresa and James for their support in organising today's event. A sincere thank you to my GEM team, in particular Bernie, Derek and Sarah, for their commitment to tackling gender-based violence, gender-based bullying and tackling gender stereotyping. A special thanks to my family, friends and colleagues for their encouragement and support throughout this project. Thank you to everyone here today. I hope you enjoyed the launch and fireside chat. I would like to conclude today's event with the powerful and truly inspirational words of John Hume, which captures the importance of promoting respect and celebrating diversity. Difference is the essence of humanity. Difference is an accident of birth, and it should therefore never be the source of hatred or conflict. The answer to difference is to respect it. Therein lies the most fundamental principle of peace, respect for diversity. As long as there is passion and courage, anything is possible. Go raibh míle maith agaibh.